Hello everyone and welcome back to the CGC Show. This is season 3. I'm excited to see everyone. I'm also nervous. It's been a year since I've done one of these. Well, one of these in this style anyway. So it's great. It's great to be back. And I already messed up because I sent out the email yesterday saying, if you want to be on the live list, do this, and I'll send out an email on the day. And in preparation of all the technology and gadgets, I totally forgot to send out the email to that list before the stream. I don't know if Dave, if you're online, but if you want to send out a quick email to that list with the tag CGC Live, you can do that. Anyway, we're all here. The people who are here, and that's what matters. So it's great to see everyone. Thank you for saying hello. Hi, Brent, Martha, Kerry, Judy, Drew, Duffy, Matthew down in Victoria. Hope you're doing okay down there. Stephen, David, great to have you all with me. It's really, really nice. So yeah, we're going to be starting up these shows again. I think I'll do them weekly, every Friday night for those in the US and Europe, and it'll be Saturday morning here in Australia. I'm still in Sydney, Australia. Still intending to head back to the US when I can, but here for now. And yeah, we're going to be diving into some repertoire today. So I've been looking for some pieces that are small and compact, but actually have a lot to offer. So today we're going to be looking at this lovely little essercizio by Mauro Giuliani. That's I was coached by Nikki last night how to say essercizio, not essercizio, as I was saying. It's a wonderful little piece. It's got a lot of musical devices that we're going to have a look at. So that can apply to that piece, of course, but will also apply to it's going to apply to many other pieces. So it's actually quite action-packed, really great, and a really nice treat to find from Giuliani. So Robert's telling me we never admit our mistakes. No, I think we all make mistakes all the time, so that's okay. But it's just really nice to see everyone. So you can see I'm in a different space. I'm in a place in Sydney, Australia now. But the place in New York is still back in New York. Evita actually is back in New York. She's about to premiere her show at the Joyce Theatre in a couple of days, actually. So that's really exciting. She's back performing as an artist again, which is really exciting. I can see, online from people's Instagram posts and people's emails and Facebook things that, the world of performing is starting to come back, the world of in-person performing, which is really wonderful to know. People are flying places, and Nick and I had a conversation with the host of our summer school last night, so those things are going underway. And of course, we have Oktoberfest coming up, actually. So the third week of this, on the 22nd of October, we'll actually be doing Oktoberfest. Maybe we can do some kind of live broadcast there that might connect with that. But hi, John, saying hi from Sydney. There's going to be a few Australians. I think it's a nice time for Australians. There's Andrew from the UK. So you're up nice and late, Andrew. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. So without further ado, we should probably dive into today's piece. So I'll play it through and then we can have a look at the score. It's been a while. Yeah, we'll dive into this piece and see what we can find. All right, so this is a little piece, is a collection, Opus 48 by Mauro Giuliani. It's number 1. And yeah, we'll have a play through it and we'll talk all about it. As soon as it started, it was over. It's a very tiny little piece, but it has some really beautiful aspects to it, and that's what I want to dive into. It's there's some technical things we can have a look at. It's some right-hand fingering, it's some left-hand fingering, But I really want to dive into, ask the question, why is this so beautiful? I think it's got two main sections, this beautiful descending passage. And then there's this lovely ascending passage. Beautiful. So I want to delve into the question is why is it beautiful? Often we can come across pieces and we enjoy them, but we're not always exactly sure why we enjoy these pieces. And then with that information in mind, we can look at how technically we can take this piece and enhance those aspects that we discover along the way. So I'd be interested to know what you think of the piece. Before we dive into the score, if you could put into the chat, what are the aspects about this piece that you think are particularly beautiful or notable, or that you liked, or maybe you disliked about it? I'll play it one more time because it's so brief. So Robert's put it in the chat there. This is Opus 48, number 1 by Mauro Giuliani. I'm actually going to, what I found with the last season of live streams is that it's not the best format to rewatch because, there's comments and I'm interacting, and so it disturbs the teaching of any focus that we've got. So I might re-record of this in a concise lesson to put up on YouTube, and with that I can maybe put the score as well. But yes, I heard... I saw Bach for Vendetta said that the suspensions during the descent are lovely. Absolutely, I 100% agree. I really enjoy the suspensions here. David mentioned the bass line. Absolutely. Drew said the descending melodic line. Absolutely, very beautiful descending line. Jeffrey's saying the chord progression, beginning with the downward progression, moving from the treble to bass, and then ascending progression. Yeah, and it is. Yes, Robert says a very active left hand. I find that the movement in the left hand at the beginning is very supple approach to the left hand because we need to sustain this gentle line while shifting. And many of you who come to coaching calls at the Academy know about the fact that if we have shifts, that's the beginning of the divisé prelude. It's really tough to get that smooth because we're shifting and we want to have this very smooth line, almost vocal-like, yet we're shifting in the left hand. So there's a technical obstacle getting in our way. The same thing happens here. Shift, pivot, shift, shifting and pivoting all the way down. And to have that movement be transparent in the music is the challenge there, because we want the music to come out. And we'll explore what we're aiming for in the music. So Carlos is asking, can you play the melody line only? I'll have a little sheet music here just to make sure I don't mess up. But yes, absolutely. So the melody line here is... So this is such a great example of when to practice melodies outside of the context of the piece, to take it out, to identify what's the melody, play it in isolation. And the reason is that we can do this without the technical difficulties of all of that shifting and pivoting I was talking about, and we can free up our technique just to play the melodic line exactly how we'd like to do it. So yes, we have... A lot of people identified Carrie. I'll say Carrie's one now, just to finish this off. Both the descending, then the little repetitive motif, and then the ascending line all takes Carrie on an adventure. I feel like I'm arriving somewhere in the middle and then going up another path. Yes, very nicely described. Let's have a look now at the score. So it's been such a long time since I've done these. I've got to make sure I'm paranoid about doing mistakes. Okay, so screen share, here we go. If you can still hear me. All right. So let's have a look now at the score. What is it then that makes this so beautiful? Well, I first think with a lot of music, when we're diving into the to understand what makes something tick, we really want to start with phrasing. And the phrasing here is really very beautiful and symmetric in a very classical way. Let's see, let's pick a color here. Okay, so to start off with, I'll play it once more. And now that you have the sheet music in front of you, have a listen to how you might think about the phrasing. I'll slow it down and I'll try and be as demonstrative as I can. And you can maybe just mentally place in some phrasing or some ideas of where things start and end, etc. But I'll try and maybe exaggerate it. So I wonder where you place those phrases, where you said, okay, that's clearly the end of an idea there, that's the beginning of a new idea. I think, people in the comments have been talking about this idea of the descending idea and then the ascending. So the ascending idea goes, descending starts here up at the C, and then works through basically a scale all the way down to that C, and then we have this material here, which is sort of a second part of that idea, I think. And then the ascending idea here, and it comes back down. So I think as a very broad brushstroke, we could say there are two sections to this. We've got the descending idea. Sounds like the end of a piece there. We've got that root position C major chord here, and it's got that cadence before this, what's called a 6-4-5-3 cadence. Very final there. And then it continues on, and now with a different texture as well. Idea as well. So I think there's two main sections, not particularly surprising, very balanced, symmetrical, 8-bar, 8-measure phrases. However, I think there's more to discover in between that. So we've got those two large ideas. What's in between? Now, I think that we can discover, and some of the people in the Academy will know this term, this sentential structure within the phrasing. It's very small, but it's there. If we hear this idea, we've got 3 C's, and this is always, I think, very beautiful in music when we have these repeated notes. We can do some interesting things with it. Halfway, and then, pardon my singing. Okay, so we've had that descending line. Now we've broken up into 2 parts. Let's hear it, if I'm going to exaggerate now, that partitioning. That works nicely, but I could even divide it up even more, so I would suggest this first idea. I'm going to stop singing. It's too early in the morning for me to sing. Right, this idea, and we'll talk about what's happening there harmonically, and then these little 2 ideas. and then same idea repeats, and 2 little phrases here. So we've taken 2 big phrases. Now we've broken up the first one into half, 2 parts, and now we've taken that half and even divided it again with this sentential structure. It's a little bit of a stretch to call it sentential structure, but it's got this idea of part A, then 2, well, actually it's the inverse of sentential structure, I suppose. Anyway, you can see what it is. It's this idea followed by, and then. So let me now partition with the phrasing and really exaggerate that and see if it works musically. All right, let's play it now. There's different ways you can play it, which is the joy of interpreting music. So let's now go back to 2 long ideas. Okay, this is 2 long ideas. Idea with the shorter breakup, the lower line. Tell me in the comments. I'm curious to know. What you prefer out of those, and also I'm see if there's any questions that have come up. So as the question I wanted to ask is which grouping of phrasing do you prefer? The longer arc or the more divided up phrasing? But in the interim, Brent has a crazy question concerning Giuliani's beaming. I don't hear it beginning on beat 3. Would you play this any different if there was no pickup beats? Does that make any sense? That's a great question, and I'll address that because it's an interesting aspect. Okay, so we've got votes, right? So we've got this is for longer phrases. We've got Bach for Vendetta, Michaela, Donna likes the divided, Jeffrey likes the longer, David likes the longer one. James takes it says the divided one takes it to another level. Heidi likes it divided. Ron likes it divided. Matt likes the longer one. Divided. Oh, it's kind of split down the middle here. I will say that one of the aspects which will impact this choice, and this is an interesting insight into any piece, is that the tempo. The tempo is marked vivace, which is very fast, right? And I think this piece actually works at a more moderate tempo as well because it's very lyrical. However, if you were to play it at vivace, I wonder if the subtlety of the divided ideas would get lost a little bit. So that's going to play into how you phrase it, is how fast you intend to put the tempo. But yeah, really very, very 50-50. So that's interesting. So this is part of the fun of interpreting music. So, okay, well, thank you for all those answers. I'm going to go back to the score now, and we'll keep diving into some more ideas. So we talked about that phrasing. We've got the different ideas there. Now, let's keep going with the phrasing. So, this feels much more familiar. So we've got one idea, ya-da-da-da-bum-beam, and a second idea, ya-da-da-da-dum-bum, diddle-diddle-diddle-diddle-dum-bum-bum. Now that's much more like the sentential idea. Small idea, repeated small idea, longer idea. And I think it's probably the most obvious point in the piece to offer some contrast in this section here with maybe a tone change or a dynamic change. It could be loud, soft, then, etc. Or you could do tonal change like a sort of a normale to a ponticello. It's a bit of a call and answer thing. It's sort of begging for it, as they say, or crying out for it there with that repeated idea. Now, the longer phrase here, I think What's nice in a piece of music is if you can start contrasting phrase length. So if we had this rather broken up phrasing approach in the beginning, it would be nice and refreshing to then get a much longer approach to this ascending and descending, sort of this line that goes up and down. So we've got all the way up to the top, and we can have a little bit, we can choose to either have a bit of a pause at the top, kind of like at the top of the roller coaster before you come back down. Running through. So we could, there I think we could have either two parts and then to the end, or just one long, big long phrase. Now, I'll play you the longer version where I don't really pause or pull back at the top. That goes just all the way through to the end. And I think, you know, people were divided about whether they liked the small divided phrases or the longer ones. And I think we said one of the decision points might be the tempo of the piece, the vivace marking, but the other might be what came before it or was coming after it. That might impact your decision as well. So the fact that we've got these smaller ideas at the beginning means that maybe we choose a longer idea, a longer phrase at the end to group it together. Okay. Let's leave that phrasing now. I think that it's pretty clear. It's well, classical music's good for that. The classical period is a very clear phrasing. Okay, so I want to now talk about the suspensions. We've talked about this in the last season, but obviously there might be some people watching that haven't seen it. But we talked about suspensions in the harmony. It's one of the great harmonic tools, the great musical tools that exist. And expressive opportunities for us as musicians. And so what happens is, let's take, for example, here at the beginning we have the notes C, E, and G. And many of you might recognize that as a C major triad. This C is actually the root note of that chord, and that carries across. We've got C, C, C at the beginning. And this, Brent, might play into your question about the anacrusis. However, underneath this, we have a harmony change. So for the first two beats, we have E and G, which is part of the C major triad. Then it goes down to D and F. And this is, it's part of the G7 harmony. So 1 to 5, not anything crazy for the classical period. But what makes it so beautiful is we have the C, which belongs here in the triad. Then the C it stays there, and then finally comes back down to a note that does belong in the triad. It causes tension and relaxation. I just thought of a really stupid analogy, of which is someone staying too long after a dinner party or something. I think I've been watching too many episodes of The Office. So we've got someone staying at your place for the dinner, and then they just stay there a little bit too long. There's a bit of tension. It's like, when are they going to leave? And then finally, they leave, and that tension is abated. So it's a bit of a silly example, but the point is that we have relaxation, tension to relaxation. This constant ebb and flow of this is what we deal with a lot. And the technical term is the preparation of the note, suspension, and the resolution. And this makes this passage make a bit more sense now of why it goes across the bar line. So here's the prepared note, here's the suspended note, here's the resolution. And with these three C's, it's got a lot of direction. It moves towards that B, and the most intense point of it is on that downbeat. And I think to answer your question, Brent, that's why it's effective to start on that third beat. It goes 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. It's very much like the music of Bach, actually, where it often doesn't start on the beat, and it has this forward momentum aspect about it. So suspensions always sort of push, they want to be resolved, so there's this direction towards that resolution, and it increases that effect by going across the bar line like that. So I think it's actually a really beautiful stroke of composition by Giuliani there. And there's another aspect we'll talk about in a little bit that enhances this forward motion even more. So that suspension happens there with the 3 Cs, and then we get 2 small ones. Same idea, suspension, resolution, and then we've prepared as well previously, suspension, resolution. So we've got this daisy chain effect. Suspension, resolution, and then the resolution becomes the preparation for the next suspension. It's this beautiful cascade, and that's where that beauty comes from. And the separation, when we talked about these 2 phrase ideas, that separation there also happens harmonically because that G sharp does not prepare for the next suspension. So the daisy chain is broken. It starts again in a way. It slides down chromatically to G natural. So the harmony is reinforcing that phrasing idea. Again, a beautiful, beautiful aspect of it. So that suspension keeps happening. G, 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 F. There's suspension, resolution, suspension, resolution, suspension, resolution. Then we have these lovely tensions here, which are not prepared suspensions. That C didn't come earlier, but we still get this. This note that doesn't belong, that then goes to a note that does belong in the triad. And so we get a lot of these. And this first phrase, this first long phrase, is just absolutely full of the suspensions, and then it's not so much in the piece in the second half. So before we move on, first of all, if you have any questions about the suspensions, please write them in the comments and I'll pop back there. But let me play it one more time. I'll just circle this. These are sort of tension moments there. And have a listen, and now really put your ears' attention on the suspensions. Another little thing that actually, again, kudos to Giuliani here, the slurs here, we often talk about slurs being there for either a technical or a musical reason, and the slurs here give even more effect to this tension and resolution effect between a note that doesn't belong to a note that does belong. And the slur helps with that. It's got that yidom that enhances the sound effect of it. So I'm going to pop over back to the chat now to see if anyone has any questions about that. Okay. Oh, Carlos was asking if you were to play this with a metronome, what speed? Well, that's kind of, that broaches a topic that I could talk about a lot. I think all pieces of repertoire have a span, a range of tempos that would work. But I don't have a metronome handy to give you the exact numbers, but I don't think it has to be a fixed number. As I said, I think this piece actually works very well on a lyrical level, so it could be played quite slowly and still be effective. So Brent's saying, yes, so you do put the emphasis on the downbeat. Dee-da, dee-da. Absolutely. I think the starting on the third beat impacts that. So I didn't have any questions there about the suspension, so that must mean maybe I explained it correctly. That's great. So there is a question though. Matt was saying that his score is in 2-2. And I'll address that because it's an interesting little point right at the beginning of the piece. Oops, I need to go back to screen share. Okay, we're back. So at the beginning here, you'll see this C, looks like a C, but there's actually Nikki maybe will share with us one day, there's an interesting sort of etymology to this symbol, which has nothing to do with the word common, but it looks like a C, and often that C represents common time. But this with the dash through it, the line through it, is called cut common time. And essentially it's implying we don't feel this in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, but rather we feel it in 2 beats. Cut, it's cut. So we feel it as 1, 2, 1, 2. And so often that indicates it's a fast tempo. 1 and 2, 2, 1. So it'd be 2, 1, 2, 1. it's often used for faster tempos because you don't feel 4 partitions in the beat, you just feel 2. Anyway, I always think these are going to run short, and they run very long. Where's my... Oh, there it is. Okay, so now let's look at something else that... Well, we can have a look at the chords. It's a bit, not the greatest font to use for chord notation, but I was in a little bit of a rush. So there's one main thing I want to talk about the chords, so I'm not going to stick on it too much. But I think an interesting point to take note of here is that there's a lot of inversions used. And the reason I believe that the inversions are used so much is because it gives Giuliani a way to really create a nice line with the bass voice, or the lower voices. So just to clarify, in an inversion, if we have a chord, C, E, G, that's in root position because the C is the lowest note. They're kind of in the order that we often hear it. But we can jumble those notes up and we can go E, G, C, and put that C on top. That's called an inversion. And it changes the sound of the chord a little bit, but it also changes the bass line. And so at the beginning here, we can see that the bass note here, or the lower note, is E. And so that gives us then the opportunity to go to D, to C, to B. Now, if we didn't have those inversions, it would sound more like this. So that bass line would be jumping from... It wouldn't have the line of this. So it's much more beautiful to have this line, this voice that moves in a stepwise motion instead of leaping around as a bass. And the way that Giuliani's managed that is through inversions. You can see all of the slash chords there, all the ones that say, for instance, G over B, which means a G major chord over the B bass. It just means an inversion. So the vast majority of the chords here are inverted. Now, the main thing I wanted to talk about in terms of harmony was is actually to do the secondary dominance. So in the first phrase, I was saying how the forward momentum is created with this suspension, the cascade of suspension, also the anacrusis as well, this tension to resolution. In the second phrase, however, we don't have those suspensions. We don't have the repeated notes. So what is it then that drives it forward? So let me play from here, the second phrase. The ascending passage in particular has this forward momentum, and what is it? I wonder if anyone can tell me, actually, just having a brief look at the chords or hearing what it sounds like. What is it that's pushing the music forward there? Because it's not suspensions. I'm going to jump back to the chat to see if anyone has an idea about that one. So what is it that's pushing the music forward in the second section rather than the suspensions? I'll play it again. What else? That's another example. That's another example of the same thing. Oh, sorry, so Andrew says chromatic ascending bass line. Absolutely. Have a listen to the bass line. It doesn't always ascend chromatically. It sort of breaks that little pattern, but it starts off like that. So that has the absolute effect of this sort of intensity driving forward. Matt says the dotted rhythm in the bass. Yeah, I think dump, 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 dump. Yeah, I would agree. I hadn't thought about that, but I think it's a good point. Yeah, it's a nice idea. So I've had great answers. The chromatic ascending line, and the ascending line in general, the dotted rhythm. However, I think the interesting part is actually not the interesting part, but the part that really does the driving is what we call secondary dominance. So if we take these chords, right, I'm going to see if I can pick up a different color here. So we've got F, right, and we've got G, A minor, and C, all right? Now, if we think our circle of fifths, or we think our harmony, if we have the chord F, and we consider that 1, if that's the 1 chord, what is the 5 chord? We go up the scale, F, 1, G, 2, A, 3, B flat, 4, C is 5. So if we have a 5-1 relationship with F, it's C major is the 5. Look at that. What do we get before it? C major. Now the next chord is that's circled over here is G. Oops, that's not a G. There's a G. What's the 5 relationship to G? So we've got G. Let's go up the scale. G1, A2, B3, C4, D is 5. And what do we get before it? Lo and behold, D major. Same thing happens the next 2 chords. You can see this pattern occurring. And what this is called is a secondary dominant. So we treat this chord here as a 1. All of these as 1s. And the chords that precede each one is the 5 of that 1. 5 of that 1. And you can see a chain of them. Again, this daisy chain effect. Not suspensions this time, but secondary dominance. And also, if you are sort of going, I want to know more about secondary dominance, we actually talked about that in season 2 of the CGC show. So have a listen to it now. I'll play it in block chords, starting over with the very first chord, C over E, which is just that inversion. So, sorry. Do you hear that? Remember I played a little bit of classical gas. Same idea. 5 of G, 5 of A minor. It's a tool. It's a harmonic tool that composers can use to really push this phrase. So we get this. Have a listen now. We'll play it as written and listen to these secondary dominants. And again, we have that tension relaxation relationship that we had occurred here. Right now it's happening in the chord. So tension, relaxation. 5, tension, relaxation. Tension, relaxation. Tension. Oops. What am I doing? Beautiful, isn't it? And if we accompany that with the genius use of inversions, which creates this stepwise bass line, this chromatic bass line, and the rhythm that Matt pointed out, we get this. It's a beautiful confluence of 3 great ideas that push forward. Oh, and again, actually 4, because we get that same crossing of the bar line. 3 to 1. The same way on the way down. We get different harmonies, diminished chords. We do get that same tension, relaxation relationship throughout. So we get the same effect. But I thought that's a really interesting thing to address about what drives that passage. And again, answering that question from the very beginning, what makes it beautiful. The last musical thing I wanted to address is just a very small one, actually, which is the very last chord. It makes me think of the Giuliani right-hand studies in that it's a C chord with 5 notes down here, all the way down the end. And, you know, people know that the Giuliani right-hand studies, they all end with these 5-note chords. And in the most recent revision of the practice routines, which was many years ago, we decided, you know what, we're going to take out those 5-note chords and just make them 4-note chords because it was causing trouble, this double thumb technique. However, in this example, how are we going to play it? We've got this little cadence, D minor inversion, so it's 2-5-1. You can play this a number of ways, and how do you want to play it? We can give the focus on the bass, boom, bra. We can give the focus on the top note, bra, arpeggiating it, or we can try and do as much of a block chord as we can make it. I'll play the 3 different versions. You can say which one you like. You like 1, 2, or 3. So the first one is giving that bass C the focus. Okay. The second one, I'm going to focus on the top note. Rolling it, but aiming towards that top note. Now the last one, I'll do a very quick double thumb through C and E on the 5th and 4th string, and try and make it as much of a block chord as I can. Which one do you like best? 5-note chords are a little tricky to be at the end there, so it's not as, there's different ways to play it. All right, I'll minimize this and have a listen or a look at your answers. I think there's always a bit of a delay. Here we go. Okay. Jeffrey says number 1, which is the bass line. Boom, bra. Donna says 2, which is aiming towards that top note. That one for me has a little less finality because that top note is an E. If it were a C, it sounds a bit more final. However, I do like the rhythmic aspect of it. Someone did say 3. Brent liked 3, which is the more of a block chord. It's tricky to do. Double thumb and AMI as quick as we can together. I think number 1 might win it. I think it has a finality with that C, the note, finally the root position C, and then also being in the bass register. So maybe that's why. But again, another option for us to use in our interpretation. Was there something else that I was going to mention? Oh, yes, that's right. I was going to talk about a couple of technical aspects about playing it. So I'll share the screen first and show you what I'm going to talk about. And then I'll show you my right hand because that's necessary. Okay, so first of all, over here in fuchsia, we've got the 1 location. So, this is basically just, again, we're taking it in this piece, which you may or may not play or have played. But it's a good example of how we can apply it to other things. Now, the fingering, the right hand fingering from the very beginning is very obvious. Using P, I, and M. Works really, really well. One little pitfall is here in this section is that if we do alternation that has been happening before, this here would be an M because we're using the thumb here and the I here. So we've gone I here. So then M is next in our alternation. Fine. Then we get a slower, then I and M. Great. However, the jump from the 3rd string to using I on the 2nd string there, or M again, it just creates an awkward moment. And it might seem pedantic to focus in on that, but the point is, if you're going to play a piece and it's quite fast, and you haven't identified that this is a little pitfall moment, that's the kind of thing that trips you up, and you spend months going, oh, I always make a mistake here, and I don't know why. And then finally someone points out, oh, you're repeating a finger, you're going MM, and it jumps those strings at fast speeds. It's possible, of course, so you'll probably get it some of the time, and then other times you'll make a mistake and it'll frustrate you. But the real reason here is the double M at a fast tempo. So to solve that, we simply employ the use of the A finger, and that solves that problem very quickly. Just a good example of needing to do your due diligence for right hand fingering before we lock things in. Now, the more interesting ones are over these two, actually. So, oh no, it's not right hand preparation, it's left hand preparation. There's just 2 points here in the left hand that need special attention, and then one down here. I think I can come back now to show you with the full shot. Okay, juggling, juggling, juggling. All right. So the first one is, have a look at my left hand here. The problem is getting to this F. We've just gone 1, slur to open, use a 4 or 3, and then we're playing the C, which we would normally play with a 1 here, all things being equal. However, we need to play an F immediately after. So that leap makes it pretty impractical. It'll create probably a little rhythmic bump and also a bit of a staccato texture that maybe we're not after. So we can get around that problem by playing with 2. So 1 is free, but we're now in we're in -1 position. And to get that first finger over here, we have to rotate. So we're playing the third finger there on the A and the first finger on the F. So you can see that there's some orchestration, some choreography needed to get to that point, and that needs some particular attention. The other one happens here immediately after. Great. First finger again needs to go over to the C. Now here is a good example of a technique where I like to solve a technical problem with a musical solution. And the solution, it's actually not so obvious here. Here I think we can just let go of the F. So this is not an example of my musical solution that comes next. But here we can just let go of the F a little early. I don't think anyone's going to miss it. We're not going to get any hate mail. But better to be clear about the fact that you're letting go of it early rather than sort of struggling to try and force it over there quickly. The one that was the musical solution I was talking about happens quite towards the end. So we've got here this very quick 3-3. There's a little jump in the bass there. This happens a lot in classical guitar music. And because it's quite quick, we can take a musical idea to make it technically easier. So we could hang on that G a little bit. So I'm pulling back a little bit. It's also a bit of a little coda here. New texture, new ideas, just little 2 measures at the end. But if we hang on it, it actually makes the left hand work a little easier. Giving time and also that separation now musically makes more sense. So the lift and the separation that inevitably happens when we go 3-3 is now a musical idea. So I like to take some technical issues and see, go, okay, well, if a staccato or a slight pullback would work there, then not only have we solved the technical problem, but we've also made it musical as well. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I think you get the idea. So I do a bit of an unusual left-hand fingering because I'm trying to get away from using so many barres. I have that to talk about, but I don't want to get into the weeds there because we're coming up towards the end of the hour. These things always fly by. But I do want to now play it through one more time so you can have all of that insight into the piece now and see what you hear. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, and we can wrap up the session with some questions. So. Action-packed little piece, isn't it? It's great. Okay, I'm going to put down the guitar. It's hot under the lights. And if you have any questions about this, please ask now. Or if you want to ask any questions at all about other random things, you're very welcome to. It's our first session back at CGC Live Show, or CGC Show. It's really nice to be sort of getting back into work. I was very excited to do this, and yeah, it's good to be with you all again. And I'm sorry I didn't send send out an email before this started running after all that set up yesterday. So Robert asked, does this piece lie in the grade 2 or grade 3 area due to technique needed? It's a good question, Robert. I was thinking about that yesterday as I was working through this. I thought, well, I'm going to do this sort of lesson on it anyway. I'll probably re-record this in a more streamlined format. It's tricky, actually. And the trickiness comes from, there's barres. There's some, the way I finger it, there's some interesting, there's like hinge barres with fingers. And it's marked vivace, and that has to be taken into account. So it would be a lot easier if we could play it slowly. But if it's intended vivace, that's part of what elevates something in difficulty. It's actually, I don't know exactly, but I would say closer to grade 5. There's some really tricky things in here, and also to play it fast and fluidly. It's a question. I was talking with Raphael and Janet recently, who many of you know. Oh, I have something to show you actually. We're discussing what makes a piece hard, because it's not super obvious in classical guitar music. There's a couple of pitfall pieces that often people think are beginner pieces because they sound easy or slow, like Cavatina, Romanza, Lagrima, Adalita, but they're all very difficult pieces actually because of various reasons. So it's an interesting question. What makes a piece difficult on classical guitar? Because there's so many different things that impact that. So I'm at a bit of a rough guess. I would say grade 5. It's a tricky piece. Martha's saying, why wouldn't you roll the final chord with the thumb strings 5 to 1? You could. I think that I was talking with Nels about this in Villa-Lobos Prelude 3. You could. I think classical guitar, it gets a little, maybe this is a bit of my opinion more than anything else, but I think the thumb strum needs to be taken care of in classical guitar repertoire because it can suddenly sound stylistically very different. So if the thumb can easily sound, just the texture really changes. Just sometimes, I'm not doing a good example, but it can sometimes sound just very different. And so yes, you absolutely could. You could do that. That would work. So I think yes, absolutely. It just needs to be treated carefully. And another thing about the thumb strum is that it needs a different type of control to arpeggiate it rhythmically. So to do this, or this, with the thumb, is a little trickier. It can, yeah. So yes, sorry, that was a roundabout way of saying yes, you can absolutely do that. But I would say take care about the sound quality of the strum, and also the rhythmic aspect of it. Matt says I need to put a plant in the background. I have a little plastic pot plant over there I could play around with. We get two votes for a plastic pot plant. Well, I don't have any other questions there, but I do want to share with you something I just have on my wall now. I think this is pretty cool. Look what I got printed out. Dun, dun, dun. This is the picture from the last summer school. The last of the summer schools is like a movie. It was such a great year, and so many people were there. Evita's dad was there. Evita was there. Caroline, Colin, Jacques. It was a very special year, and so I've got that on my wall to remind me of. Sometimes doing this kind of work sometimes get very easy to second guess yourself and say, "No, I'm going to send that email. Oh, this is not a good idea." So I look at that picture and I know who I'm writing to. So that's nice. It's nice to have that up on the wall. We are working towards getting the summer school set up for next year, for 2022. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Thanks everyone for showing up. I'll make sure to get that email out next time. The thing is, it's 8 a.m. in the morning, so it's easier to be a little bit in a brain fog to start off with. Yeah, thank you everyone. And look, we 3 minutes to spare. How's that for timing? So the idea will be we will run this again at the exact same time in 1 week. And then in 3 weeks, don't forget that we have Guitoberfest running at Classical Guitar Corner, and that's free and open to all the members, and it's going to be fun. It's a whole weekend, but it will be running at this time on the 22nd of October. So we may try and live stream something around this time. I wonder if it could work. I'm not sure. But anyway, thanks everyone. Great to see you. I will see you again in 1 week. What we're going to talk about, I don't know, because I haven't planned that far ahead. I might bring a guest in, or maybe we'll have a look at some more music. But I hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, I'll see you all soon. Bye.